bad prose, what you gonna do when the Prose Police are coming for you? Bad prose. All right, everybody. So this has been on the agenda for a hot minute here. Ice Planet Barbarians, a sci-fi alien romance by Ruby Dixon. So this is one of those things that I want to go into with an open mind.
Yes.
And of course, we can't get an idea for certain aspects of the book's quality, like plot and symbolism, other stuff. We can only gauge it based on the segment we're able to make time for in the show. So let's just get into it. This is the publicly available sample on Amazon. Part 1, Georgie. Up until yesterday, I, Georgie Carruthers, never believed in aliens. Oh, sure, there were all kinds of possibilities out there in the universe. But if someone would have told me that little green men were hanging around Earth in flying saucers, just waiting to abduct people, I would have told them they were crazy. Any thoughts on that so far, Caitlin?
It seems kind of basic, but I mean, it's only the first paragraph.
Now, how do you feel about the hook sentence, the opening?
The hook sentence, I'm not really snagged by it, especially since I don't know, it's just kind of weird. The person was like, "Hi, here's my entire name."
That is a little strange. Yeah, it is a little weird that the narrator would be like, George, like they're making a statement to court.
Yes.
The other thing that I think is a little bit silly is to open your book with "I never believed in aliens" when there's a big blue alien on your cover. It's like I feel like you have more opportunity to how am I trying to say this? When one of the main aspects of your book is right on the cover, you don't need to make your opening line about it. You can use your opening line to hint at something else, or to reveal another aspect of the story, or to just be a better hook to ask a more interesting question.
Yeah.
Rather than just make a statement that we already know about the book. So I definitely feel like that opening line could have been better. The rest of the paragraph, yeah, no problem with. Just kind of.
It's just kind of.
Yeah, not bad, not good. Okay, but that was yesterday. Today? Question mark. Today is a very different sort of story. I suppose it all started last night. It was pretty ordinary, overall. I came home after a long day of working the drive-through teller window at the bank, nuked a lean cuisine, ate it while watching TV, and dozed off on the couch before stumbling to bed. Not exactly the life of the party, but hey, it was a Tuesday. I gotta admit, I kind of like that. But hey, I kind of like that.
Yeah.
And Tuesdays were all work, no play. I went to sleep, and from there, shit got weird. My dreams were messed up. Not the usual losing teeth or naked in front of the class dreams. These were far more sinister. Dreams of loss and abandonment. Dreams of pain and cold white roofs. Dreams of walking in a tunnel and seeing an oncoming train. In that dream, I tried to lift my hand to shield me from the light. Except when I went to raise my hand, I couldn't. That had woken me up from my slumber. I squinted into the tiny light someone was shining in my eyes. Someone was shining something in my eyes? I blinked, trying to focus, and realized that I wasn't dreaming at all. I wasn't home either. I was somewhere new. Dun, dun, dun!
Dun!
Then the light went off and a bird chirped. I squinted my eyes, adjusting to the darkness, and I found myself surrounded by things. Things with long black eyes and big heads and skinny pale arms. Little green men. Okay. I'm going to go back here. We're going to stop reading there. So, okay. Things to do. Oh, no. Come on. There we go. All right.
This is very generic.
Yes. Yes. I would agree with you. I don't think it hasn't committed any cardinal sins yet.
No, but
But at
it's
the same
kind
time,
of boring.
I'm not sure I would say it's boring just yet, in my opinion. But what I think.
Well, I mean, because we're not getting any description of the character. What kind of an environment does she live in? Is it a she?
That's true. With the name like Georgie Carruthers, we really do not know.
Because it's gender ambiguous.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I do know someone named Georgie, but her name is spelled with a J. So, you know, I mean,
here's my thing. Here's my thing.
mm-hmm.
There's nothing necessarily wrong with it, and there's nothing necessarily catching about it. I feel like a scene is being set and I'm being led somewhere, which is fine for that the author is supposed to do that. But it's almost like the author is doing it too well, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's like everything's being handed to me, and I don't like that when I read.
I disagree. It's not like that. It's not like everything is being handed to me. It's the fact that it feels like it feels formulaic. That's not the same, Kate. Formulaic isn't the same as being handed to you.
Well, I mean, because what I mean by that, I guess, is it's basic in the sense that it's like, oh, well, here, I did this thing, and I did that thing, and this thing, and that thing, and instead of being like, hey, here is the thing that I did in this environment that I did it in, and me as a person, basically, we're walking around not actually getting to see the person.
That's true. We have moved from work to the living room to bed to some other room with zero description of any of the places. So we've been in a white room until now and with zero character description. That's true.
Also, like, does she like the fact that she's living a basic life and is basically a basic bitch?
Yeah, the only thing that's really been unique is we've had a little bit of character voice with a little bit of quippy kind of language, and it hasn't been like really distinct either. It's been casual level quip.
Right. Like,
better than nothing. So
yeah, but if you're going to write in first person, for God's sakes, let us actually get to know the person who's narrating.
Right. And if your narrator is this boring the whole book, I'm probably not going to enjoy the book very much.
Right.
Okay. Now, as to actual stuff about prose, this last line I read, things with long black eyes and big heads and skinny pale arms, and not a single fucking comma in that sentence, and it sounds like a 5th grader wrote it.
Yeah.
Like, holy fucking shit. Can I get a little bit better description? Like, you've just introduced aliens. Can I please get a little bit better description? And can you please use punctuation? So,
are they disembodied?
Right.
Heads and arms?
Yeah, with long, things with long black eyes. How are they long? Like long up and down, long side to side, long diagonal? What do you mean by long eyes? Is the actual eyeball long? in its
Right.
socket is the pupil long, and big heads and skinny pale arms. What's a big head to you? What's a pale arm to you? I've seen a lot of dudes with arms that I could break over my knee. They have skinny pale arms. What constitutes a skinny pale arm to you?
Right.
Little green men, and then the crux of it right there. Little green men. The author knows that everyone has a stereotypical picture of little green men in their head, and they're relying on cultural conventions of
Yep.
phrases. And
Lazy.
that's lazy. It's acceptable sometimes, not always acceptable. And I would argue that when you're writing science fiction, if you want to be taken seriously as a sci-fi writer, you should probably not rely on societal conventions too much. Be original. Okay, moving on. I'd screamed bloody murder, actually. So
That's kind of cliche.
yeah, but hang on, the reason I stopped is I suppose okay. I was briefly thinking that the tense was switched, but I mixed up in my own head somehow, so never mind. Okay. One of the aliens tilted its head at me, and the bird chirping sound happened again, even though his mouth didn't move. Something hot and dry wrapped over my mouth, choking me. Gross. And a noxious scent filled my nostrils. Oh shit. Was I going to die? Frantically, I worked my jaw trying to breathe, even as the world got dark around me. Then, I went back to sleep, dreaming of work. Lame. I always dreamed of work when I was stressed. For hours on end, angry banking clients yelled at me as I kept trying to tear open packs of 20s that wouldn't seem to come open. I'd come to count out change only to get distracted. Work dreams are the worst. Usually, but this one was a relief. No trains, no aliens, just banking. I could deal with banking. And that brings me to here. I'm awake. Awake and not entirely sure where I am. My eyes slide open and I gaze around me. It smells like I'm in a sewer. I can feel a wall behind me and my body hurts, all freaking over. If you're going to abuse syntax like that, you better be more clever than that. My head feels blurry and slow, like all of me hasn't quite woken up yet. My limbs feel heavy, drugged, I realize. Okay. Kaylin, any thoughts before I...
Well, like you said, if you're going to abuse syntax that way, you need to be far more clever.
Yes.
Also, the narration continues to be as dry as stale toast.
Yes. Now, something else I wanted to talk about was we are getting moved. So all of these things, all of this stuff, these are great places where you could add characterization. You could talk about the way your character felt about all this.
Mm-hmm.
Add, because this is first person, they could give us commentary that gave us a great idea about their personality. We could, this, between what we've had happen in the book right now, you could fill 2 pages with instead of the half a page that I think this would be if it was printed. And I can't help but feel like I'm reading a YA sci-fi. And this is supposed to be adult because it's alien erotica. And so that really makes me feel like this is a low-level writing book that is purely a right-to-market dopamine fix. And, you know.
Well, because the market it is in, as somebody who's had to produce a few shake and bakes, the idea is they skimp on the characterization and character development even sometimes skimping on things like actual story, and the entire goal is just to push towards, hey, we just want all the sex scenes. It's basically, it's the reason why this industry is called mommy porn, because the entire interest is, hey, we're just going to push this as quickly as we possibly can to those scenes with as minimal amount of story as possible, because that's not what people are reading this for, because they're not.
Right.
So hence the lacking narration and characterization, because these parts were not cared about.
Yeah, all of this just feels incredibly rushed.
Yeah, so you get the lazy things like, it's smelling like a sewer, instead of describing what that smells like.
Right. And by the way, why would a banker know what a sewer smells like? Just a little smart ass question there.
Well, I mean, if it's like living around here, if it rains too much, you walk outside and it smells like somebody shit in the front yard.
Gross. Okay. I realize someone's drugged me. Not someone, something. My breath quickens as a mental image of the dark-eyed aliens returns, and I look for them. Wherever I'm at, I'm alone. Thank God. I squint in the low light, trying to make out my surroundings. It seems to be a large, dark room. Faint orange light is emitted from small running tubes in the ceiling about 20 feet above. The walls themselves are black, and if I didn't know better, I'd say this looks like a cargo bay from some weird science fiction movie. You have not earned the right to be meta yet. On the wall opposite me, I count 6 large, 6-foot metal tubes lined up against the wall like lockers. Orange and green lights run up and down the sides of the tubes in a variety of squiggles and dots that might be some sort of alien writing. On the far wall, there's an oblong door. I can't get to the door, though, because I'm behind a metal grid of some kind. And there's a god-awful smell. Actually, it's not just one smell. It's several of them. It's like a piss, shit, vomit, sweat cocktail. And it makes me gag. I try to cover my mouth with my hand, but my arm is slow to respond, and all I manage to do is flail a little. Okay, so we do get why the place smells like a sewer. So that's good.
Mm-hmm.
And here in this paragraph, we do see that we start to get some description of surrounding, finally.
Yeah.
It's
like it's about damn time, girl.
Faint orange light is emitted. Yeah, we're only in our, fifth room? The walls are black. And if I didn't, I'd say this looks like a cargo bay on the opposite wall. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So this thing about this looks like a cargo bay from some weird science fiction movie. Again, that's one of those things. Yeah, it's relying on conventions, and I hate to sound like some kind of a snob or something, but I almost want to say I feel like you haven't earned the right to be meta with the level of writing you're at. Like, show me that you can do a good job. Show me that you can do a good job of describing environments and being artistically inclined towards how you tell me things before you start being lazy and relying on mental images you can pull from the popular culture.
Yeah.
Because that's twice now that they've relied on societal well-established societal conventions to
Because
establish.
the only time that is okay is when a person has exerted the literary energy, for lack of a better term, to describe things pretty heavily up until a certain point, and they're just trying to move very quickly with a part that's appropriate for telling rather than showing, so that they can just go ahead and get to the next plot point.
Right.
And move on with the story.
Let's see, right now we're supposed to be, especially if this is a sci-fi, we're supposed to be in the building phase right now.
Mm-hmm.
This is not the place where you take shortcuts and try to move things along.
No.
And again, there has not been a sufficient level of
building anything.
Belief accumulated by the author. The expression suspension of disbelief.
Yeah.
Well, I'm having to suspend my disbelief that this is going to improve. And I shouldn't be having to do that.
No.
But my arm is slow to respond, and all I manage to do is flail. I swing my drugged, heavy head, looking around the room. Actually, I'm not alone now that I look around. Again, I'm not alone now that I look around. Could you say that any more bland, please?
I think she did.
Have some salt on my cracker? Fuck.
It's like, no. No, we need low sodium for all of you old farts in the old folks' home.
Oh, salt being bad for your heart is a myth.
I know.
Piled onto this side of the grid, bodies curled up and asleep. In the low light, I count 7, maybe 8 forms about my size, huddled together like puppies. Seeing as how we're all on this side of the metal grid, I'm starting to suspect I'm in a jail of some kind. Or a cage. But I repeat myself for false dramatic effect. Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun. Yeah.
I guess if I have
right
to be in a cage, it could be worse. There's room enough to stand, though not much more than that. At least there are no aliens in here with me. I want to panic, but I'm too out of it. This is like going to the dentist's office and getting a dose of laughing gas. I'm having a hard time focusing on anything. My bare upper arm aches, and I sluggishly rub my fingers on it. There are several raised bumps on my arm that weren't there before, and I rub it harder. Giggity. Feeling hard under the skin. What the fuck? I try to peer at it in the dark, but I can't see anything. Images of the aliens and the light shining in my eyes. The nightmares. The terror. It all rises, and I panic. A whimper escapes my throat. A hand touches my other arm. Don't scream, a girl whispers. Okay. Credit where credit is due. We actually got a fairly decent build of the internal state there. Could have been better, but not bad.
Yeah.
Caitlin?
I know she was trying to build tension, but the fact that it took this long and there wasn't a whole lot of build up until this point, I don't really care whether there's a reason why she should or shouldn't scream.
Fair point. Fair point. Yeah, so I only started getting a little bit drawn in after Or a Cage, and it's because the language started having just the slightest little bit of characterization in it if you read into the subtext enough.
Yeah.
And I'm a sucker for characters and I'm a sucker for characterization. So I was drinking that new information in readily. But I can see what you're saying, where if someone has already been turned off by the writing before this, that they would no longer do that.
Yeah, I mean, especially if you're going to write in first person, the voice needs to be a lot stronger.
Yeah. Yeah, this is a very passive person's voice, a very someone you would say is high on the agreeable scale, because these are circumstances that would have a normal person freaking the fuck out, and this person has been remarkably chill about this,
Yeah,
relatively speaking,
yeah,
up until now.
yeah, because we're getting images that should be, oh, this is exciting and new and, scary, but we're getting it in a voice that just makes it sound like, oh, well, that regular Tuesday I was talking about, this is what happens on one of those.
Right. And now, I will say, in defense of the author, this is written in past tense, and it's written in first person. So
Yeah.
there's an implication that the narrator is going to be fine. So the author might be working from that angle,
Mm.
where the narrator is talking about this long after it's happened,
Yeah.
and they're no longer freaked out or anything like that. They're just trying to tell you how it happened. But if that's the case, then the description of things that happened needed to be more colorful.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. There didn't necessarily have to be the fear component in there because, again, past tense, but it would have still been nice to get more exciting language.
Yeah.
Okay. A hand touches my other arm. Don't scream, a girl whispers. We'll do one more, and then we'll call it.
Okay.
I roll my too heavy head until I look over at her. She's about my age, but blonde and thinner than me. Her hair's long and dirty, her eyes big in her lean face. She glances around the room and then puts a finger to her lips in case I didn't understand her earlier warning. Silence. Okay, okay. I choke the cry rising in my throat and try to remain calm. I nod. Don't scream. Don't scream. I can keep my shit together. I can. You all right? Yeah. I slur my mouth, unable to form words. And I drool all over myself. Yo, relatable. Lovely. I lift one of my heavy hands to swipe at my mouth. Thori. Okay, Mike Tyson. You're okay, she says before I panic again. Her voice is pitched low so as to not wake up the others. We're all a bit hung over when we wake up. They drug everyone when they arrive. It'll wear off in a bit. I'm Liz. Georgie, I tell her, taking time to sound out my name properly. I rub my arm and point at it at the strange bumps. What's going on? Well, Liz says, we were abducted by aliens, but I guess that one was obvious, right? I smile wryly, or try to. I probably just end up drooling on myself again. Liz shifts next to me. Okay, let me see if I can hit the big highlights everyone else here. Okay. And then she was about to yeah, they were, yeah, okay. Okay. Oh, fuck. Where? Shit. There you go. Okay. Thoughts, Caitlin?
Is it just me, or does it seem like she switched from past tense to a more present voice in describing this scene?
You know, I didn't notice it, but I didn't notice it at first, but she absolutely did. And that's so you can find it in every sentence now that I look at it. You're right. And then puts a finger to her lips in case I didn't understand her earlier warning. And so in that whole, she glances around the room and then puts a finger to her lips in case I didn't understand her earlier warning. No implication of past tense. Silence.
Yeah.
Okay. I choke, the cry rising in my throat, and I try to remain calm. No inclination of past tense. I nod. That sounds downright present. Don't
Mm-hmm.
scream. Don't scream. I can keep my shit together. I can. So here we have a narrator switching from clear past tense to ambiguous leaning present tense. And sometimes that's pulled off well, sometimes it's not pulled off well. It didn't break me out of the read, but Caitlin noticed.
Yeah.
So the jury's out, apparently,
Well,
on whether or not it was done well. What, Kate?
well, a developmental editor would have gone through this. I should say a line editor would have gone through this and been like, okay, so you need to make up your mind. Either you're going to do this whole thing. If you're doing it in first person, you're going to do it in first person present tense. Or you need to fix this and make it sound more like you're retelling this situation past. Because it's inconsistent narration.
Well, yeah, I agree. It's inconsistent narration, but what I was getting at is that sometimes you can get away with that if you're really good.
If keywords there being if you're really good.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
you're okay. She says, before I can panic again, her voice is pitched low so as not to wake up the others. We're all a bit hungover when we wake up. They drug everyone when they arrive. It'll wear off in a bit. Little stiff, but passable. I mean, I could see how someone who's in a high stress situation might not be talking with normal mannerisms, and so they would sound a little bit more like that. So we can let that one slide potentially. See if the dialogue becomes any more personal later in the book, which we'll not get to. Georgie, I tell her, taking time to sound out my name properly. I rub my arm and point at it at the strange bumps. What's going on? Nothing wrong there as far as I'm concerned. Well, Liz says you were abducted by aliens, but I guess that one was obvious, right? Yeah. Yeah, so that's not bad. Caitlin, any objections there?
No.
Okay. I smile wryly, or I try to. I probably just end up drooling on myself again. The only thing I have to say about this is I would have punctuated this differently. She wrote that sentence almost like we're in a fight scene. I smile wryly, period, or I try to, period. I probably just end up drooling on myself again, period. That is literally the 1, 2, 3 fight scene paragraph, and that does not work outside of a fight, in my opinion. You're trying to make everything feel like sharp and punchy for no reason. You're describing a high person's facial gestures. It doesn't need to be fast-paced and exciting.
Yeah, well, because
Smile Riley, comma, or I try to, period, I would probably just end up drooling on myself again, period.
Yeah, because the whole idea behind this and part of her switching to present tense was to try and up the tension in this scene, and that's the reason for punctuating it that way.
Oh, I understand, but that's the wrong kind of tension to use.
Well, yeah, but it just shows how green the author is. Because this appears to be the only way they know how to build tension, because there has been a lack of actually authentically building tension up until now.
Right.
So it's out of place.
So some things the author could have done to build tension better up until this point. We could have gotten some characterization of the narrator so that we had a reason to sympathize with them. We could have gotten more internal voice so that we could have understood how panicked and serious this is, and how how that's affecting her, that
Mhm.
would have, because we empathize, right? So when the character was
Yeah.
clearly having this existential crisis, you, the reader, would empathize. The reader and the writer, excuse me, should know that, and therefore use that opportunity of the character's voice to build that empathy.
Mhm.
Then you can describe what the confinement is like and what the surroundings are like, and you could have given it more detail than it got before this conversation actually started happening, and that would have increased the empathy, because you'd be like, oh man, yeah, that fucking sucks, yeah.
Mhm.
And all of that would have saved the writer from having to write this scene right here
Yes.
like it is a fight scene, at least in terms of the way the punctuation is being used. Because I've read plenty of fight scenes where that is exactly how the punctuation looks. Very short sentence, period. Very short sentence, period. Slightly longer description of consequences of first two sentences, period.
Yeah.
It's one of the most common writing techniques for writing fast-paced scenes. And I'm not saying it's a bad technique, but you don't use it for things other than fight scenes.
Yeah, and we've not really been given a reason why this needs to be fast-paced
Exactly.
as far as the context of this scene.
Exactly. So,
Yeah. Verdict.
overall, I'll go ahead. I don't want to interrupt you.
No, I said verdict.
Oh, well, I was about to issue a final statement.
Mm.
So, overall, if I was picking this up in a bookstore, I would spend a few more minutes maybe reading it. If I was gifted the book, I would certainly read it based on what I've read so far. But I would, by the point that I've read to so far, at that point I would say, oh, okay, this is going to be like only a somewhat entertaining time killer thing to read, not something I'm going to walk away from having had an experience. I would know that I would instantly know that I was holding fast food fiction, and that if I had anything more important to do, I should do that instead. That's the point I'm making here. So,
Yeah.
the verdict.
Yes.
If you want to be taken seriously as a sci-fi writer, get good.
Yes. Yes. That is so.
I find you guilty of overly generic voice.
Yes, we what is it? We're going to sentence you. Shall we sentence them with a misdemeanor, or is this a felony?
Well, my understanding is that this person wrote a bunch more books like this, but unfortunately, we don't have time to see whether or not they learned their lesson after the first time. That might be a segment in the future.
Yep, all on its own. So for now, as of looking at it, it is a misdemeanor of bland. Bring the seasoning sometimes.
And
or
so
next time.
That's Team Adventurous out here patrolling these literary streets, making sure that crimes get prosecuted and justice is done.
Bad prose, what you gonna do when the Prose Police are coming for you? Bad prose, bad prose.